Hey guys, welcome to the M Cluster Recaps, where we discuss shows that we are currently watching. With me today is Jose,
Hey,
and we're going to be discussing Good Omens Episode 3, Hard Times.
and in this episode, we start with the Angel of the East Gate, Aziraphale. And God is talking to him, and we bring back the flaming sword issue about him giving his flaming sword away, where God asks him, didn't I give you a flaming sword? And he's flat out lies to God and says, oh, I must have left it somewhere, which I guess is not really a lie. He did leave it somewhere. He left it with Adam. But
That's true. It wasn't a total lie, but it was a lie of omission.
yes. But this is the beginning of what I guess I can refer to as a time travel sequence. It's just them throughout the ages and them witnessing different events, such as the Ark, Noah's
Yeah.
Ark. They talk about the
Which
flood.
they not only talk about it, but you can see Crowley's upset, and he doesn't like that essentially God is going to kill everyone with a flood. Although, as Aziraphale did point out, that it's not everybody, it's just the locals. God's not killing the Australians yet.
Well, especially since there was no Australians at that point. At least that's what we're led to believe, anyway. So one of my favorite parts of this episode, or this scene rather, is when Crowley points out that there's a unicorn making a break for it, and it just keeps running away. Nobody notices, and he's like, you still have the other one, which is obviously why we no longer have unicorns.
Yes.
Right, and then we go to the crucifixion, where they're witnessing Christ being crucified, and it turns out we see the nicer side of Crowley on this one, where he says he shows Christ all the kingdoms of earth because he didn't have much time left. Right, so they witness that event, and then we come to Rome, and they're just
Yeah.
getting drunk.
Yeah, but pretty much almost nothing happens in this super short sequence. I think it was all of 10 to 15 seconds, but it was interesting to see the different hairstyles and different clothes styles at least.
Well, and I think this is the first time we see him with the sunglasses, right?
Yes, and that is a good point. And if I remember right, when I've looked stuff up, they did have something like sunglasses even back hundreds of years ago, but they weren't like that.
Yeah, I found it kind of odd when I saw it myself. But he keeps these for a while. Then the next time we see him is in 537 A.D. in the Kingdom of Wessex, and it turns out Crowley is the Black Knight, and Aziraphale is a Knight of the Round Table.
Yeah, and what's cool is that it was basically just meant to be a joke scene, but they meet each other for a second, and they're like, oh, well, if you guys aren't going to attack, we're not going to attack kind of thing. And they're like, oh, yeah, he's all right, and they all just kind of leave. Nothing actually happens.
Nothing actually happens in this scene, correct. Right? And then we jump to London, 1601, and they're in the Globe Theatre watching Shakespeare's plays being performed. And I forget what line it is.
Not just performed, but being basically written.
Yes.
And critiqued and everything at the same time, because why not? And apparently everyone thought it was terrible.
Yes, and there's a couple things. One, Crowley says a line. I forget what line it is from which play, but Shakespeare I like that. I'm going to write that down. So that makes it into one of his plays.
It might have been Romeo and Juliet, because at this point he's writing Hamlet.
Right.
And we see that either his Shakespeare's, that is, I don't know if it's just his wife or if it's his assistant, but her name is Juliet.
Her name is Juliet, right. And so, and then this is the first time that we're aware of that they discuss making an arrangement between the two of them, because they both have to go to Scotland, it is, I believe?
Yes.
And Crowley's basically saying, well, there's no point in both of us going if we're just going to cancel each other out. So why don't you go do the good thing and the bad thing? And after some prompting, Aziraphale agrees. And this is, I think, the first time we see through action, not just him not saying something or not doing something. He's actually going to do something bad. Right?
Yes. And in return, Crowley did something good, because as he had agreed, there was, I might have even been Shakespeare, like, oh, it'll take a miracle to get people to come to this play.
Yes.
And then Crowley looks at him, he's like, all right, fine, I'll do that one.
And hence we have Shakespeare now. Right? Then Paris in 1793, where Aziraphale gets himself captured because he goes across the channel to France during the war.
Because he wanted food.
Because he wanted food.
That's all you want. He wanted food. And he's in there talking to this guy who's all like, oh, well, this other guy cutting people's heads off, they suck. It's a good thing you're getting me to do it.
Right. Like,
and then you see Crowley in there, and he's just kind of watching for a second before he says anything. And then when he does, he, of course, frees him, and Aziraphale explains to him why he went. And he's like, well, this is why you're captured. You went like that. If we're going to go get food, at least dress up properly. And so he does. He miracles himself some clothes.
Well, he doesn't just miracle himself some clothes. He actually miracles the clothes that the executioner had.
Yeah.
And the executioner is now in his clothes. So when they come to go get him to execute, they actually take the executioner. Now, what I don't understand from that scene is why the executioner didn't say, wait, it's me, don't kill me. He just got all upset and sort of cried. He's like, oh, I guess I'm dead now. This is my life.
Well, I mean, what are you going to do? They
argue. Say something. Say,
I don't know.
I'm like, I'm not supposed to be the one dying.
Do they really think they're going to believe him wearing what he was wearing?
No, but you don't just accept it, do you? So that's basically, that was the gist of that. And then, of course, what do? They go to lunch. Like, This guy's going to, basically, Aziraphale is responsible for this guy being murdered. And he is a murderer. He's a bad person. But then they're like, oh, well, this guy's dead. Let's go eat.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't give a shit.
He wanted crepes, man.
Yeah. Right.
I
Then
want some crepes.
we jump to London, 1862. This is actually an interesting scene. This is the first time Crowley asks for a favor. And what is that favor again?
He wants some holy water from Aziraphale.
Holy water.
He doesn't explain why. He just says that he wants holy water.
Well, what's interesting about that is Aziraphale thinks it's to kill himself.
Yes.
You know, he's like, I'm not going to help you suicide. And he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, I am not going to kill myself. He's like, just trust me, it's for something else. And Aziraphale flat out just gets pissed and walks away. He's like, I'm not doing this. And he throws the note into the water because I guess Crowley did not want to say it was holy water. He wrote it down on a piece of paper. And here's a part I was actually a little bit confused about, Brandon. You tell me what you think. When he gets upset with Crowley and throws the note in the water, the note catches fire. Who did it?
I'm pretty sure that Crowley did that because
Why?
Crowley's the one who controls fire.
Right, but why? Why would he do that?
Because once the note is no longer in Aziraphale's hands, the note could be found by someone else, and he wants to destroy the evidence.
It just says holy water.
But it's by his.
It doesn't say.
It doesn't say his name or anything, but it's plausible that the demons could see who wrote it and stuff.
I think that's a stretch. But I agree with you. I do think it was Crowley, but it felt like the way they shot it, he throws it, it hits the water, and it burns. It felt like it was Aziraphale. And at first I was like, is that an expression of Aziraphale's anger, or is it just, the way they filmed it? So I think we're both in agreement. It's probably just the way they filmed it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, because I thought that was an interesting scene, and that's actually an important scene. Because it's leading up to something, and we don't know what that is. They don't really tell us, well, this is why I need it, or this is what he's planning on doing, or there's no mention of an overarching plan. He just wants holy water. And so that's something interesting to note, and I'm sure it's going to come up again later. So we jump to World War II London. And
1941.
This is another interesting scene. I really like that whole dynamic. He's basically working for the Nazis. He's coming it.
Yeah, I want to say he's basically lying, though. He's pretending to work for the Nazis
Correct.
while really working for the British government, although then he gets double-crossed by the lady that's in the background there who is pretending to work for the British government but is actually working for the Nazis.
Yes, she's a double agent. And he basically, they say to him, "Oh, you don't seem worried now that we told you we're going to kill you," and he's like, "I'm not worried at all." And that's when
Now,
he shows up.
now, not just that, but one thing, important thing to note here is that his whole task as this Nazi double agent was to bring them books, like specific prophecy books, and they ask about Agnes Nutter's book.
Right, and he tells them there are 0 copies available, and they say money's not an object. He's like, "No, you don't get it. All of the books were destroyed. There's one in existence, and nobody knows where it is."
Yeah.
So that's when he gets turned on, and he's still not really worried, I think, because they talk about being, was it discorporated?
Discorporated.
Discorporated, which just basically means their body dies, and then they got to go fill out paperwork to get another body. And he doesn't really seem too worried about that, and then at that point, Crowley shows up. And Crowley's walking through the church, and he specifically,
got hot foot.
Yeah, he's got hot foot. He specifically says it's like walking on sand on a hot beach, because he's inside a church. And so he essentially rescues Aziraphale by blowing up the church. He arranged to have bombs that were supposed to fall. By a bomb that was supposed to land somewhere else lands on this church, and they have a discussion about, again, being discorporated. Discorporated. And he's like, "Well, it would take a miracle for us to survive this." And Aziraphale's just kind of like, "Fine."
Well, the others didn't even believe him, although they had heard of him. They had heard of the man named Crowley.
Yes.
But yeah, they didn't believe him. He's like, "Oh, there's going to be a bomb that drops in about 60 seconds." And of course they didn't believe him. They paid the price for not believing him, because it does indeed drop right on them. And did indeed take that miracle of Aziraphale's to save them both.
Right. And then when Aziraphale realizes that they're safe, he realizes he forgot about the books. But
Crowley apparently miracled those to be safe.
Yep. So again, this is just showing that affection between the two of them, and that ever-growing relationship that they have that has to come into play at some point. They have to at some point realize, hey, we got a thing for each other. And I'm not sure how that's going to work out. But so we were then, we moved to London, 1967. And this is the very first time we see I guess the only time we see young Shadwell. And basically, he is part of a group that is going to pull a caper. And when you find out the caper's for, Crowley. Right?
Yeah, Crowley's putting it together, and apparently it's robbing a church.
It's robbing a church so that he can get
holy
water. Right? So here's that thing again, right? It's like...
And during all this, then Aziraphale finds out and meets Crowley in his car after he met with Shadwell and these other people. And by the way, Shadwell had offered Crowley his multitude of services that his Witchfinder army can provide.
Now, at this point, was the army in shambles? I
would have to say yes, just because they recruited Shadwell in general. But he's not that great.
But if he was recruited, that means there were other people.
Some other people. As many people as he leads people to believe, no.
No, not at all. His vast network of soldiers is non-existent. So then when Crowley meets him in the car, he actually hands him a thermos full of holy water. And he tells him...
and it was a very 60s thermos.
Yes. He's like, don't go unscrewing it, don't do anything stupid. So they actually cancel the caper, which they don't really address. He just, they leave the meeting, and I guess Crowley goes, "Oh, I have what I need now." At some point contacts them and says, "Hey, we're not doing this anymore." But
well, unless he didn't. I mean, they could have still robbed it, and he could have just...
Had more holy water?
Well, not necessarily more holy water, but They were going to rob it. And my thought was that they were going to rob it, and he was just going to get the holy water while they were robbing the church of other things.
Oh, I thought they were specifically getting holy water.
Because I can't see the other people being so stupid and incompetent that they wouldn't question the fact that they're just stealing holy water.
Well, what do they care if they're getting paid?
It's still a question, like why do we even need to steal it? Why can't we just go in the church during the day and be like, hey, priest, give us some fucking holy water?
Can you do that? Can you walk into a church and say, hey, can I have some holy water?
Well, I mean, if I'm a bad guy and I have a gun, I can do whatever I want.
This is true. And also, well, I can't say that. I don't know about all churches, but most Catholic churches I've been in, when you walk in the church, into the church through the door, there are 2 bowls on either side of the door full of holy water, so you can do the crucifixion thing.
Yeah. So my thought is that it was to get those other people inside the church and for them to rob something, thinking they were getting stuff out of it, and during the process, he would tell one of them to get him a cup of holy water or whatever.
Still weird, but at any rate,
yeah,
that never gets discussed. It never gets shown. So whether it happened or not really sure. But then we come back to the present, and I actually talked about this in the last episode, but it occurred in this one when Anathema is freaking out about losing the book. Right? She's throwing stuff around in her yard, and then Adam comes across her, and he's like, "What's wrong?" And they basically have the discussion, and he's going to come inside to see if he can help her. This is another interesting tidbit.
Now the thing though is with that is that he's like, "Oh, are we going to go in the witch's cottage?" And she's like, "Oh, well, that's actually my cottage." And he's like, "You're not a witch, are you?" And she's like, "No, I'm an occultist."
Yes.
But yes, the next point is the dog. So above the entryway to her cottage, there's this horseshoe, and I think it's God that narrates this portion, saying that the horseshoe is there to protect against evil.
Yes.
And when they're going into the house, the dog is looking at it, not wanting to go in, but Adam's like, you get in here right now, and that kind of solidified this dog into not being evil. Right,
and that was actually something I missed on the first watch through. I didn't realize he was slowly turning into a good dog. But you see the glowing horseshoe there is because he walked through, and I guess he was cleansed of evil or whatever. But ultimately, the Hellhound is a good guy.
Yeah.
Right. And then we just have some stuff here. This is the gun. No, it's a hat. Of Witchfinder Major, thou shalt not commit adultery. Pulsifer. And then this is they're talking about the Witchfinder army. This is where they go through that.
Yeah. So there was, well, maybe, because we don't even know if these 2 people were actually in it or if he just grabbed some random army photos.
This is true, but I mean, we know the Witchfinder army was a thing.
Yes, that's true, because of adultery pulsifer. So we know it was a thing at one point. We just don't know how far that succession and how large it grew.
Right.
But when you get down to the bottom, apparently there was like Witchfinder Sergeant Spoon and Cup and Cabinet and
Bottle, deceased.
How Newton is seeing these names and not questioning the shit out of it, I don't know.
I don't think he cares if it means employment.
I don't know. I would still question it. I mean, I would be glad for the employment, but I'd be like, fucking come on, man. It's just me and you, isn't it?
Right. And so then we switch to a cafe in London where present-day Shadwell, or now he's Sergeant Shadwell, and because he was Lance Corporal Shadwell when we first see him in 1967, so he promoted himself, or got promoted, who knows. And he is, again, offering his services to Crowley. How do Crowley and Aziraphale not know that this guy's fucking scamming them?
I don't know. There's a lot of incompetence in this show. But I also don't really think Crowley really cares. Because, he meets with them or whatever, And obviously, this is not the first time. And he just kind of fluffed off the fact that he looks the same. Because Shadwell, he's like, oh, you look just like your father. And he's like, oh, yeah, he's good.
Yeah. So then this goes back to the cottage.
Anathema and Adam, yeah.
Right.
She was talking to him about different things, showing him some magazines that were occult-related. And that's actually... he starts getting really into it, but she's like, oh, I can see people's auras. And then she goes to look at his, and she's like, it's really odd. I can't see your aura. And then we hear God narrate that it's like someone trying to stand in Times Square and look at all of Manhattan. You can't do it because you're in Times Square. So then we see this shot of Adam's actual aura, and it's like an entire multiple countries, apparently.
And then we see Aziraphale talking to Sergeant Shadwell, and they both want him to go to the same place, so he's like, okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, he wants him to go and follow Adam. And what's odd is they never really explained how Aziraphale knows Shadwell.
They do not. You are correct.
And he says that he's essentially like the one who gives them money.
Well, they both give him money.
Maybe Crowley does. We don't actually know.
In the shop, he says he gives him 250 pounds.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Yes.
I missed that then. But yeah, like they never show how Shadwell and Aziraphale met. Or maybe Shadwell was always kind of supporting the Witchfinder army.
Maybe. I don't know. But it's anyway, they're getting played for suckers. And it works out to the benefit of everyone.
Yeah.
Then we come to our first character introduction of this episode. It's Famine. And he is one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And he is in a diner. And he's trying to peddle something. Was it chow?
It was some kind of
non-food
food.
Yes. And they called it chow, yeah. So they're like, don't call it food, it's called chow.
Yeah. And they were like, he showed off this whole spread of different things, like a hamburger and a dill pickle made with no food contents at all.
At all, right. And that's when the delivery guy that we saw earlier show up to deliver War her sword. We see him bring Famine the scales, and he knows now it's his time to get ready. So he just kind of says, I'm out. And his assistant, or whoever she is, asks when she should expect him. He's like, I don't know, a long time.
Yeah.
So he's getting ready to make his ride into the apocalypse.
And this is number 2 horseman.
Correct. And then we switch back to Adam, and there's some discussion of what he can do. And I believe this is also where Newton is doing some research, and he figures out that there's some weird weather patterns in that.
That was a little earlier while they were essentially discussing the other Witchfinders and Spoon and stuff.
Right.
And because he had discovered that, and he brought it up to Shadwell's attention, and Shadwell was like, "Oh, it's probably nothing." And then he gets the call, and he's like, "Oh, well, go check it out anyway, and follow this kid while you're at it."
Right. Well, basically, what they're alluding to is that Adam he's coming into his powers. He's able to control certain things, and we see Adam is asleep and he's dreaming. And then we cut back to it's like the Minister of Energy or whatever he is.
Yeah, it was like a power facility, and they had a nuclear reactor, and it's all kinds of alerts going off. And they're like, "Well, that doesn't make any sense. It's showing that the nuke reactor isn't even there."
Right. And so there's all this power. There's all this power surging, and they ask for permission to go into the reactor. And he gives it to them. They suit up. They open the reactor door. And their reaction is kind of silly. She says something to the effect of, well, you don't see that every day. A nuclear reactor with no reactor in it.
Yeah.
And then they say, well, what's creating all the power? And you see this piece of candy. What is it, a lemon something?
Lemon drop.
Lemon drop. And then they cut back to Adam, and they show Adam dreaming. And that is when we start hearing the voices that are talking to Adam in his sleep.
Yeah, not just dreaming, but you see him dreaming, and he has a bag of open lemon drops next to him.
Right. Alluding to that's what's causing the whole nuclear issue.
And there were other things too. So like, I'm kind of wondering what other weird shit we're gonna see, because he was reading all those books and magazines that Anathema had shown him.
Right, the psychic magazines, the witch magazines.
Yeah.
And that is where this episode comes to an end. Again, it's another good episode. I'm really enjoying this show. I'm kind of interested in seeing where it's going to go from here. I know we still have to meet 2 more of the Horsemen, so I'm sure that'll be part of the story. But I guess at this point now, it's just going to be the search for Adam. Them trying to figure out where this kid is.
It shouldn't be that hard to search. They have his address.
They have his phone number, don't they?
No, he gave Shadwell his actual address.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely correct, now that I think about it. So
yeah, that's not a lot of searching involved. It's just essentially going and seeing.
Recon.
Yes, recon.
So that'll do it for this episode. Next episode we'll be doing next week, and checking that out and see how that is. Let us know what you thought. If there's anything we missed in this episode, let us know. If there are any tie-ins to the book that we're not catching, let us know. Don't forget to like. If you want to subscribe, come back. That'd be great. And are there any final thoughts, Brandon?
Not for me. Like I said, I kind of want to see what else Adam can do. Are my thoughts going forward.
Do you think he's gonna go like full on like X-Men evil, like what is that? Bright something? Bright Scale? What's that movie? Brightburn.
Brightburn. I mean, maybe, but at the same time, no. Like, I feel like I could see Warlock doing that more, but Adam's kind of nice.
Yeah, but Warlock doesn't have any powers.
Well, true. Not disagreeing there, but Warlock's kind of like a dick, and Adam just is kind of a nice kid.
He's a nice kid, right?
Just to hang out with his friends.
So I guess we'll see where it goes. And if you have any questions, you have any comments, let us know. And that is it for us this time. We are out. See ya.
Later, guys.